Live every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past and life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love, let the music get you high, and when it's said and done, you'll know.
June 4th, 1989, my dear friend Don died in a car crash, 25 years old, and never before Don's death had I suffered the death of a man I was so in love with. Don was born here in Albuquerque, April 25th, 1964, about 1 month before I graduated from high school in Illinois. Back then, I was a very religious 18-year-old farm boy. I had never visited New Mexico. I did not know that some men are in love with men. I did not know that some men make love with men. I did not know that I was gay. If anyone had told me then that a baby boy born in Albuquerque, New Mexico would become so precious to me, how could I have ever understood it? I met Don when he was 16. A few months later, I told him I am gay. He was attracted to me. He wanted to have sex with me. I was very attracted to him. I wanted to have sex with him, but I turned him down because he was under 18. I did not want to risk getting arrested, going to prison for having sex with him. Don was deeply hurt. I was torn inside. And here is much of his letter expressing his anger for my refusing sex with him because he was under 18. December 14th, 1980. Don. First of all, I'm a young man, 16, and I don't see where age has anything to do with sex. If a man wants sex with me and I want sex with him, that's fine. But if a man wants sex with me but is afraid of my age, then it doesn't make any sense. A man is someone of 18 years old, so I'm not a man, but what or who I enjoy to have sex is none of anyone's business. When I went down that last time, I was hoping for sex, but now I know it can't happen. To answer your question, yes, I am sexually attracted to you. Are you sexually attracted to me? Second of all, I never plan to tell my parents anything at all that concerns my sex life, just the same as they wouldn't tell me about theirs. I could live a long time without sex if I wanted to, but as long as I can have it or give it, why should I stop? I've had bad results from sex, but I can't make a wall out of it. I think that gay sex as well as straight sex is wonderful, but I don't have to stop or alter my sex life because I'm 16 years old. I want you to know that there's not a damn thing wrong with my thinking. Don, I'm sorry if this is a hostile letter, but you really made me mad. I should have been a little more understanding, and I'm sorry. This letter, and the original letter is back at my home, but this is a photocopy. This letter was the only angry letter Don ever wrote to me. And Don did not realize, as many people don't, the arrest and prosecution I might have suffered if I had had sex with him when he was 16, and the many other risks I could have faced. June 22nd, 1983, when Don was 19, he and I made love in Denver, where he was living. And the next morning, a woman friend of his asked me where I had slept. And Don, with balls and honest, spoke up. He slept with me. How attractive Don was, lean physique, sexy voice, intense, passionate, curious, yearning for love. Don's mother was Chicana, his father Italian. Don and I never lived together as partners. He drank booze, he smoked cigarettes. I hate booze, I hate cigarettes, but I deeply loved Don. I was in love with him. His mother asked me to be in charge of his memorial service and to be an honorary pallbearer. I poured my heart into the songs I sang. Amazing Grace, Precious Lord, Take My Hand, Cordero de Dios, Yo Te Amo Mucho. Back then, I was still somewhat religious. I poured my heart into what I spoke that day. People wept. His mother later told me no preacher, no priest would have done a better job. And the next night after Don's memorial service, his white stepfather told me, I never understood until last night. Apparently, he meant he had never understood a man being in love with a man until he experienced the deep feelings I expressed for Don in that service. Don's lover, Kyle, whom I met for the first time at the funeral home, told me he had seen a picture of me that Don had. Kyle had asked Don who that was. And Don said to Kyle, he and I are very close. And Kyle asked Don, well, what does that mean? Don told Kyle, you know what that means. Don's brother and sister gave me more than 30 letters and cards I had written Don for years, and he had saved. That's so important to me. He didn't just throw them in the wastebasket. He saved them. As I later read them, I was so glad to see that I had clearly expressed my passionate, romantic affection for him. How terribly sad if we love somebody and that person dies and we never told them how much we love them. Deep grief is a precious agony, showing us how much we can love someone. Before they closed the lid of Don's casket, I chose to be the last to say goodbye. I kissed his hands, I kissed his forehead, I kissed his lips, and I wept. Earlier, I placed a small card near his hands for others to read. To my beloved Don, with eternal embraces and passionate affection from Don Schrader. When my mother died in 1982, over 7 years before Don, I mourned tremendously, alone on our farm in Illinois, with sobs and yells. She was my all-time closest friend. Don's death matured me to weep freely in public, in front of other people. Worse than suffering such loss would be never becoming close enough to anyone in life to feel such pain in parting and to shed tears in public with no shame. I've gone many times to his grave at Fairview Cemetery on Yale Boulevard Southeast here in Albuquerque. I kissed the grass above his lips, above his hands, above his cock, and above his feet. When my mother died in 1982, when my dad died in 1994, I chose to be the last person to kiss their lips before their caskets were closed. As the old song says, save the last dance for me. Never, 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 never be ashamed to show love for someone when they're alive or when they're dead. And I dedicate this program tonight to my beloved Don. Men, if you enjoy having a woman or a man suck your cock and swallow your cum, taste your cum when you're pleasuring yourself alone. If we are healthy, if we eat only healthy food, if we do not drink booze, if we do not smoke cigarettes, if we do not take prescription drugs or street drugs, if we do not work around dangerous chemicals, our cum should taste good. Our cum is nutritious. Many years ago, I had sex with a college student in Virginia. His cum tasted awful. Maybe he never knew it. If he never tasted his own cum, and if no one he had sex with told him. I did not tell him. Women and men swallow the cum only of men who live healthy. Poisons from a smoker's cigarettes are in his cum. No matter how good-looking he is, no matter how kind, how dependable he is. I remember my bisexual friend Herman here in Albuquerque, who died years ago in his 90s. Herman greatly enjoyed sucking men off. He said their cum was like a milkshake. Well, I don't drink milkshakes because I don't eat sugar or milk, but I do understand what Herman meant. The world population, 1850, about 1 billion. 1930, 2 billion. 1960, 3 billion. 1974, 4 billion. 1986, 5 billion. 1999, 6 billion. About 7.75 billion of us are alive today. 7 times as many people on earth now living as less than 200 years ago. 7 times the number. and twice as many are alive now as were alive 60 years ago. So why make more babies? Now, if you already have children, love them, treasure them, care for them, and teach them by your own example to enjoy living simply, consuming no more than our fair share in our world family of 7.75 billion sisters and brothers, plus the many billions to follow us if human beings survive on earth. Billions more people consuming more resources, billions more people poisoning the earth with more waste and pollution. Where does it end? Massive disasters, suffering, wars, famine, starvation. The worst population problem on earth is not in India. The worst population problem on earth is not in China. The worst population problem on earth is not in Africa. It's in the United States. Why? Because most people here consume and pollute many times more per person than most people in India or China or Africa. No U.S. child has the right to live in luxury with a room full of toys and a closet packed with clothes, while a child in Africa dies of hunger. Now, some people call such a U.S. child privilege. I would say the child is damn spoiled, and so are the parents. Do they have a conscience? We have no right to spoil children here rotten, while children in China or Africa or India suffer with no home, hungry. I have no right to much more than I need, while millions, hundreds of millions suffer on far less than they need. A child here is no more precious than a child in Africa or Haiti or Iraq or anywhere else on earth. If you have no biological children, and if you're committed to fairness for all people now and in the future, how can you justify having more than one biological child? Better yet, have none. If you love children and you want to help children, help the millions of children worldwide who desperately need love, care, food, and shelter. Adopt a child or become foster parents. Give money to those children's organizations that stretch every dollar to do the most good, with no fancy offices, no highly paid staff. For many reasons, I am glad I have no biological children. Why make more babies? Deadly with extreme weather now, climate change is about to get so much worse. It's likely going to make the world sicker, hungrier, poorer, gloomier, and way more dangerous in the next 18 years, with an unavoidable increase in risks. A new United Nations science report says this. The UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report said that if human-caused global warming is not limited to just another couple tenths of a degree, Earth now struck regularly by deadly heat, fires, floods, and droughts in future decades will degrade in 127 different ways, get worse, with some potentially irreversible. The scientific evidence is clear. Climate change is a threat to human well-being and planetary health, says this major report. Delaying cuts, putting off cuts in heat-trapping carbon emissions, waiting on adapting to warming's impacts, will miss a brief and rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for everybody. Today's children, who may still be alive in the year 2100, are going to experience 4 times more climate extremes than they do now, even with only a few more tenths of a degree of warming over today's heat. But if temperatures increase nearly 3.4 more degrees Fahrenheit from now, they would feel 5 times the floods, storms, drought, heat waves, according to this collection of scientists. Already at least 3.3 billion people suffer and are highly vulnerable to climate change, and 15 times more likely to die from extreme weather. Large numbers of people are being displaced, they got to move, by worsening weather extremes, and the world's poor are being hit by far the hardest. More people are going to die each year from heat waves, diseases, extreme weather, air pollution, starvation because of global warming. And just how many people die depends on how much heat-trapping gas from the burning of coal, oil, natural gas gets spewed into the air, and how the world adapts to an ever hotter world. With every tenth of a degree of warming, many more people die from heat stress, heart, lung problems from heat and air pollution, infectious diseases, illnesses from mosquitoes, and starvation. The report lists mounting dangers to people, plants, animals, ecosystems, economies, with people at risk in the millions and billions and potential damages in the trillions of dollars. The report highlights people being displaced from homes, places becoming uninhabitable, such awful conditions that nobody can live there. The number of species dwindling, coral disappearing, ice shrinking, and rising and increasingly oxygen depleted and acidic oceans. Some of these risks can still be prevented or lessened if we take action now. Don't wait on companies or governments to wake up. We each need to change our lives now, if we haven't already. This report is an atlas of human suffering, a damning indictment of failed climate leadership, says the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. With fact upon fact, this report reveals how people and the planet are getting clobbered by climate change. The panel of more than 200 scientists puts out a series of these massive reports every 5 to 7 years, with this one, the second of the series, devoted to how climate change affects people and the earth. Last August, the science panel published a report on the latest climate science and projections for future warming, branded Code Red by the United Nations. All the risks are coming at us faster than we thought before, said one of the co-authors of the report. Floods, droughts, storms, more of it will get really bad much sooner than we thought before. Every bit of warming matters. The longer you wait, the more you will pay later. Since 2008, weather disasters have forced about 20 million people a year out of their homes as climate change refugees, with the future looking even worse in some places. By 2050, 1 billion people will face coastal flooding risk from rising seas. More people will be forced out of their homes from weather disasters, especially flooding, sea level rise, tropical cyclones. That's just 28 years from now. Some regions that are presently densely populated will become unsafe, uninhabitable. And it says that small islands face that overarching significant risk of no longer being livable. The rising of the ocean water from the melting ice. Eventually, in some places, it will become too hot to work outdoors, which will be a problem for raising crops for us to eat. Many climate scientists know far more about the climate crisis than I will ever know or understand. But I ask them, have you made huge changes in how you live because of what you know about the climate catastrophe? Have you, the climate scientists who are the experts, changed how and how much you travel? Have you changed the size of home you live in? Have you stopped eating meat and dairy? Are you living much more simply? Have you stopped flying thousands of miles to climate conferences? Have you stopped flying thousands of miles for pleasure vacations? And if not, what good is all your information on the climate crisis? Many people who are not climate scientists may not take seriously the extreme danger if you who do know the dangers and know far more about the facts and figures than most of us will ever know, if you do not change your ways, if you refuse to wake up and stop being a damn spoiled scientist. Why do many men hate and fear homosexuality? Hatred for sex and romance between males is drilled into many boys from early childhood. Many 10 or 12 or 14-year-old boys would rather be called liar, fool, thief, stupid, lazy, son of a bitch, than be called fag or hoto. And sadly, many men are afraid to admit their attraction to men, especially if they also strongly love their wives or girlfriends. They fear losing sex and romance with the women they love if those women find out they have attraction also for men. And some men suffered abuse as kids from men who forced sex upon them when they did not want it. Some men, as adults, suffered pestering and pressure for sex from men who refused to take no for an answer. Some straight men are jealous of gays and bisexuals' easier access to sex partners because many men were taught you are more of a man if you're a stud. But many women, sadly, were taught that they're sluts and they're less of a woman if they have sex with many men, no matter how much they love those men. The number one cause of death in New Mexico for youth is guns. Most deaths by guns in the United States are suicides. I hate guns. I've never owned a gun, and I never will. I condemn kids shooting kids or adults. But adults are largely, not totally, but largely the cause. Kids do not own the gun factories. Kids do not own the gun stores. Kids do not write, produce, and act in the evil U.S. movies that glamorize guns, glamorize settling problems with violence. Kids are not the mayors, the business owners, the city and state officials who say nothing publicly against the evil movies made in this state of New Mexico. Movies glamorizing guns and murder. Kids are not the adult actors of all colors, who get filthy rich poisoning kids' minds with violence. Kids are not the parents who own guns. Kids are not the parents who love guns. Yes, kids who shoot and kill need to change. Sure, of course. But even more so, the adults who are even more responsible for the atrocities kids commit. Doug, a U.S. veteran, said, "I hope you can see the hell I live through every day. My experience has left me a very lonely person. I have no real friends, and I don't think I ever will until I find peace within myself. I hope that someday I will be able to forgive myself." The sad testimony of Doug, a U.S. Vietnam veteran. Even worse than COVID is war fever. A father has war fever when he believes the U.S. military will make his son a better person by enslaving him in this nation's most violent gang. A fan in the sports stadium has war fever when he or she gets excited, feels patriotic pride when a U.S. jet bomber flies over the stadium to open the football season. Millions of men, millions of women have war fever when they enjoy watching war movies, when they own and love guns, when they play violent video games, when they choose to be ignorant and silent about U.S. war crimes worldwide under both Republican and Democrat presidents. Cigarette smoking kills hundreds of thousands every year in this country. Smoking causes lung cancer, emphysema, chronic bronchitis. Smoking makes pneumonia, tuberculosis, flu, colds, asthma worse. Smokers die twice as often from cancer as people who do not smoke. Besides lung cancer, cigarettes can cause mouth cancer, cancer of the throat, cancer of the pancreas, cancer of the cervix, cancer of the kidneys, cancer of the bladder, cancer of the colon, and cancer of the bone marrow, not just lung cancer. And many deaths from heart disease are caused by smoking. Smoking not only harms the blood vessels of the heart, smoking also injures blood vessels all over the body, causing strokes, poor circulation in the legs and the feet. Strokes can paralyze, put the person in a wheelchair, and keep the person from speaking normally. Smoking causes wrinkles. Think of how some beautiful young women spend many hours and hundreds of dollars on making their skin look great, but if they smoke cigarettes, they're damaging their skin, causing wrinkles. Having surgery is a greater risk if you're a smoker. Smokers require more anesthesia. They're more likely to have breathing problems and to need extra oxygen in the surgery. The wounds of smokers are slower to heal. Smokers have more broken bones because smoking weakens the bones. Some women smokers have more problems getting pregnant. Some women smokers have more problems having miscarriages and more complications during pregnancy and when they give birth. Smoking mothers' babies are more likely to be born premature. They're more at risk of sudden infant death syndrome. They're more at risk for infant allergies, mental retardation, behavior problems. Living with a smoker causes hundreds of thousands of cases of bronchitis, pneumonia, ear infections, worsened asthma in young children. Smoking lowers the sex hormone testosterone. When will we see that on a package of cigarettes? Smoking causes many men, especially as they get older, not to have good hard-ons. Smoking is one of the main causes of men not getting good hard-ons. Smoking causes the discs in the spine to go bad, resulting in low back pain. Why pay the filthy rich, lying cigarette companies to make you sick and to kill you if you're a smoker? Why be their fool? Why let them con you, allowing them to addict you to their poison? I've had dear friends who smoke cigarettes, like my beloved Don. I love my friends, but I absolutely damn cigarettes. I would not smoke a cigarette for all the money in the world, and the same goes for damn booze. More than 200,000 Guatemalans in Central America were murdered during the 1970s and 1980s war, and the United States furnished weapons, officer training, CIA involvement. 662 villages. Think of that. 662 villages in Guatemala were destroyed, and the U.S. furnished the weapons, the officer training, the CIA involvement. If you lived during the 1970s and 80s, did you know this? Did you give a damn? The U.S. CIA overthrew the Guatemalan government in 1954. Why? Because the democratically elected Guatemalan president opposed U.S. corporations stealing his people's labor and resources. In Nicaragua, the U.S. supported the brutal dictator Somoza. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said about Somoza, he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. Conscience? More than 50,000 Nicaraguans were killed in the war to remove the dictator Somoza, that was backed by the United States. And many years later, 30,000 Nicaraguans were killed in the war between the Sandinistas and the U.S.-backed Contras. In El Salvador, 75,000 killed in the civil war there. U.S. leaders and taxpayers are responsible for this river of blood in Central America. U.S. leaders and taxpayers supported the murder of most of the more than 355,000 people killed in these three nations, Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, in Central America. I damn the atrocities of Saddam Hussein years ago and of Osama bin Laden. But the U.S. has murdered far more people in Central America, and many millions of people also in Iraq, Yugoslavia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Chile, and dozens of nations. And tragically, most people in this country do not know the facts of what the U.S. is doing all over the world, the bloody massacres. And sadly, some people here do not give a damn. Millions of people here have never once called or written Congress or the President to oppose U.S. mass murder in other nations. And then they wonder, well, why do those people hate us? Well, if you knew what they have suffered from this government, you would never have to ask. In the 1970s, U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger assured the dictator Pinochet in Chile, South America, that the U.S. would not demand that Pinochet respect human rights in his country of Chile. Churches say God is a spirit, but what is a spirit? If God is a spirit with no cock, no balls, why do most Christians refer to God as male? He, him, his. If God is good and cares for all people on earth, how can God watch millions of people for thousands of years suffer war, cancer, starvation, hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, much more? How can God watch such misery and not help, especially when millions beg God for help? Why does God want people to worship and praise God often and fervently? Is God insecure? Does God get mad and raise hell on earth? Most churches say we human beings are evil sinners deserving punishment, even hell. And many sermons and books try to explain why an all-powerful, fair, loving God refuses to help millions of suffering people, many of whom beg, plead desperately for help. No one on earth can explain this. Instead of just asking if God can forgive us for our evil actions, the even bigger question, can we forgive God if God is real? Can we forgive God for not helping suffering millions, begging for God's help? And how would we ever know for sure if God answered our prayers or if something we prayed for would have happened anyway? And why do most people in the United States believe in heaven after death when there is no proof heaven exists? Now, I would love to see all my loved ones in a much better world, but I strongly doubt that happens. And I don't want to swallow feel-good, make-believe bullshit about heaven. Why does God want us to treat each other better than God treats millions of people in natural disasters? Earthquakes, floods, tornadoes, birth defects. Some churches teach if a child dies before the age of accountability, maybe 7 years old enough to choose right from wrong, that child will not go to hell. But if God is fair, and if God loves all people equally, and if God knows how people will decide for or against God as adults, and who will go to heaven or hell, why does God not kill as children all people that God knows will decide against God later in life and go to hell? It all makes no sense. Crazy. A child taught by parents to believe in God often feels that he or she must believe this crap or risk losing the parents' love, favor, and care. It took me years with much help from many people to realize no one is up there. No all-knowing, no all-loving, no all-powerful God to believe in, to pray to. And that was a huge shock for me because I sincerely had swallowed and spread false advertising for God for many years. To wake up to this reality feels lonely and terrifying in this massive universe. If I had not been taught this as a child, the false advertising for God, would I, as an adult, have fallen for this make-believe bullshit? I wasted thousands of hours in church services, majoring in Bible in college, reading religious books, thinking about the Bible. Hitler said, "What good fortune for those in power that people do not think." Hitler knew most Germans were religious and used to swallowing crazy crap. So Hitler saw they could fall for his evil crap and lies. Sadly, most churches, most Sunday school classes do not welcome deep questions. Certain things are never said, never openly questioned among church people. Most churches do not say one can be an honest, caring, responsible person even if one does not believe in God. Pressuring children to believe in God is child abuse. And many people pressured as children to believe in God stay caged and trapped in religion until death. Not just Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, the Muslim religion. They never feel free to question deeply their faith or the Bible or the Quran or their other religious books, or to question many other things in life, in their families, in their nations, in so-called science, in advertising, and on and on and on. If people are allergic to a certain food, they all may have different symptoms. Try cutting out certain foods for at least a month and see if you feel better or worse. Some of the foods most likely to cause allergies are cheese, milk, chocolate, cola, peanuts, citrus, nuts, corn, wheat, eggs, shellfish, strawberries, beef, pork. These are some of the foods most likely to cause allergies. Corn or wheat in some form are in almost all processed foods, in cans, boxes, packages. And some people suffer for years not knowing they're allergic to one of the foods they love and eat most. Food allergies can cause breathing problems, mucus, dizziness, pains in joints, hyperactivity in kids, severe stress, headaches, stomach cramps. Food allergies can cause diarrhea, brain fog, memory problems, trouble sleeping. For most of us, nuts are excellent food if they're raw, not roasted, not salted, and shelled just before eating. The fats in nuts can go bad if you shell them and then they sit around and they're not eaten soon after being shelled. So shell nuts just before eating them, and never eat salted or roasted nuts. Always follow the money. Whoever pays the fiddler usually calls the tune. Never swallow as truth the claimed results of any study approving booze or sugar or prescription drugs or meat or dairy or nuclear power or cell phones or computers or whatever, if people who make money off that item help pay for that study. Whoever pays the fiddler usually, not always, but usually calls the tune. Follow the money. And do not let them con you into eating or using something harmful so they can grab your money. News stories usually do not tell us a complete list of who all paid for that study. Many scientists sell their brains, their careers, their consciences. Money addiction corrupts people in all occupations. If the scientists eat or use the item, often they downplay the dangers not just because of the money for the study, but because they do not want to face up to the painful truth and change their own lives. Scientists' personal addictions and prejudices often distort their published conclusions. Question everything in the pursuit of truth. Question everything I say. Question everything the government says. Question everything your family says or your religion says. Get passionate for the truth. Question everything to find and follow the truth. Spanking and hitting children harms them. Spanking and hitting children does not make kids better. Spanking and hitting children can lower their intelligence, can cause delinquency, can cause more anxiety and depression in those kids, cause more aggression, more addiction later to booze and to other drugs. Being a good parent depends on love and attachment, setting a good example, not the threat of being hit. When children are in a clinic, hospital, or jail, they usually have suffered abuse or neglect from their parents or other caretakers. And even parents who seriously harm their children are sadly often treating them as those parents were treated by their parents. Cursing them, slapping them, insulting them, threatening them can cause as much or more damage than bruises on their bodies. Countries where children are hit and spanked more have higher rates of adult violence and other crimes. We must love children more and love them better. Stop hitting, stop cursing, stop spanking any child. Booze for me? Hell no, never. My fresh piss to be healthy? Yes. I have drunk my fresh piss for health every day since November 10th, 1999, over 22 years. To your health. Good night.
Sing songs of love, let the music get you high, and when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine on. And when it's said and